antitrust statement, which also will probably be on every presentation that you see. I'm not going to read all of that. In association in this business, you've heard the antitrust statement. So we'll just use this so that if somebody asks a question that I can't answer because it might affect this, I'm just going to refer you back to this. Anybody have any questions on the housekeeping stuff, or having too much fun? Okay. So here are our course objectives. This is why we're here. We're going to talk about the importance of hiring coachable sales reps, how coaching more, solve less, avoid a one-size-fits-all approach. This is all the stuff that you guys have seen. The top coaching ideas and technology applications, how to align expectations, manage for better sales activity, produce the desired results, which is obviously the goal, and why continually training salespeople and professional development should be part of the culture. And that, to me, is the most important thing that we're going to talk about. The next one is, I'll get used to this soon. Meet the speaker. This is me. I'm Audrey Pearson. And I am the founder of the Security Sales Academy, and that's an online, live and virtual sales academy, teaching salespeople actual sales skills, not system design, not product knowledge, but actual sales skills so that they bring in the business. And then I also do consulting, so I help people figure out how to do coaching, what to coach for, and I can do the coaching for you too. And that's as much of the publicity as I'm allowed to give you. I have experience in the industry for, I was saying earlier, 1,000 years, but it's really only about 30 years that I've been doing this because I started as a very small child. And I've been an alarm company owner for 15 years and then sold the company as manufacturer's rep and director of sales for the West for DMP. And I was vice president of sales for Northern California regional dealership with 5 branches. So, and 17 direct reports, which I will explain to you why that's not a good idea if you don't already have that one. So that's my experience. It's end-to-end across the security industry. I've been involved in every part of an alarm company and every part of selling product. So that's how I came to be here. All right, I don't even want to show you that one yet. Okay, so the question I have is, if you didn't know that this was part of the sales leader track, you know, that this was just coaching talent, when you guys hear talent as dealers, what's the first thing that you think of? I'm going to guess and say it's probably the technicians. Because most of the time when you're talking about, you know, people who are the talent of the company, it's always the technicians. Now, I started my alarm company with my husband. He was the tech side, I was the sales side, and we kind of split things that way. And so the same conversations that your company has between salespeople and technicians, doesn't matter how big or how small the company is, it's going to be the same conversations. We had 2 people in the company, and the conversation was still the fact that if this didn't go in the way that it should, it's because I sold it wrong. Or if it went in and it was difficult, it's because you didn't put it in the way I sold it. Because you decided something else should be better. All that conflict is always the same. But in an alarm company, talent is typically what you think of when you think of the technicians, because it's a talent to be able to put those systems together. I mean, you need skills to be able to do that. But the salespeople, I mean, what do you need for salespeople? You need a body who can show up at, you know, customer calls, and somebody has to go. So what I see a lot of is the salespeople are, a monkey could do this job, they're all used car salesmen, or they're order takers. And I have heard every single one of these being said about salespeople within a company. Some in companies that I have actually worked for. But this is a lot of times how we see our salespeople in our alarm companies. And it's not even necessarily a conscious thing. What happens is that, again, we see our talent as the guys who really have that technical skill, and they carry the tools, and, you know, without them we can't put anything in, so it doesn't matter what you sell, although we on the sales side say if we don't sell anything, you have nothing to do. But you have to have talent on the sales side. And, you know, if I say to you, well, when you get home this weekend, are you going to go buy a new car? Are you going to go buy a new TV? And you think, oh yeah, I'm going to have to go in there and I'm going to have to talk to a salesman. And what's the first thing you think of when you think of that salesperson? A lot of this is what you think of. It's innate. It's what we've all been led to. We've seen that car salesman everywhere. on TV and in movies and in our own car lots. So we know about all of that. And that's kind of our instinctive response. Well, now you've got salespeople who work for you. We owe them better than that. We need to be able to say they are the talent and they deserve the same respect and the same support, the same guidance, coaching, training, everything else as our technicians do. That's something that is really kind of an unconscious bias that we all sort of have. And it's something that we can get past, but we have to be conscious of it. The talent is on both sides. And if both sides aren't firing on all cylinders, you don't have a successful alarm company. You've got to have the technicians who know what they're doing, but you also have to have the salespeople who know what they're doing and what they're selling and how to design a system. Or you're going to have technicians who aren't going to stay either. So this is what we owe our folks. These are the superstars. That's my little superstar person. That's my superstar salesperson. That's what we want. And what we're going for here is to have everyone who's a salesperson in your company be a superstar salesperson. I'm willing to bet that not everybody has that. Typically, we've got one really great person who we suck up to completely so that they'll stay, they won't do anything else, they won't quit, they won't go be lured away to somebody else. And then we've got other people who are other salespeople. But what if we had everybody who was a top salesperson? What would the company look like if we had that? So the first thing we want to do is hire coachable sales reps. This is a non-coachable sales rep. Now, the thing is that they don't actually come to the interview looking like this. If they do, hopefully, we haven't hired them. But I'm willing to admit there are people I've hired who were not necessarily a first choice to hire for a salesperson, but you needed a body. And you had to have somebody out there, and you thought, well, I can teach them. And granted, they didn't look like that. They may look like that now because they're not having fun. They're not doing well. They haven't learned anything. It may be them. It may be us not teaching them what they need to know. But the first thing we have to do is figure out how we hire these folks and where to find them and how to make them great sales reps. So there's a difference between managing and coaching. And I'm not going to say that one is better and one is not, because that's not true. You really do need both. But we're going to talk about coaching today. Managing is more of the, here's what I need you to do, here's what your quota is, here's what we sell. This is everything that I want to have happen from you. The coaching side is, I'm going to work with you to help you accomplish that. I'm going to talk to you about, what it is that we sell, what our unique selling proposition is. It's an old term, but it's still valid, which is, what is it that we bring to the table that makes us better? If you as a salesperson don't know how to say that or get that across to the customer, it doesn't help, because then it's just price. It's all just price. Now, a manager can say, I want you to sell these systems for this price. A coach is going to help you figure out how to do that. So that's what we're looking for, because coaching is not the same as managing. And Jack Welch, who was chairman and CEO of General Electric in the olden days of 1981 to 2001, and anybody here who wasn't born then, don't raise your hand and don't talk to me later. Said, we're constantly amazed by how much people will do when they are not told what to do by management. You can't manage self-confidence into people. And it's true, you can't. But you can coach them to it. And what he's saying here basically is, they're not being told what to do by management. It means that they're not being micromanaged. You have to be able to train them and then let them go. You don't let them go open loop and they don't go on their own. You're going to support them and coach them, but it's not the same thing as managing them. So the traits of a coachable rep. Obviously, this is your coachable rep who can do everything. Drive and ambition is number one on the list. They're optimistic. I listed personality, not what kind of personality. We just want them to have a personality. And I know you've all interviewed people who said they were salespeople who you obviously saw had no personality, which means they're not going to be a great salesperson no matter what you do. They're goal-oriented, they're responsible for themselves, they're responsible to the company, and they're responsible for themselves. And they're eager to learn. I didn't put anything in here about that they can speak well, that they can put a sentence together, that they can write, that they're dressed nicely. All of those basic things I'm going to expect that you guys are looking for. But a coachable rep is somebody that we can basically bring along to greatness. They want to be there, and we're going to help them to get there, not a body filling a room and filling space. And of course, eating up all of our benefits and base commissions and all the rest of it. So drive is a really necessary trait. It's critical with a new sales rep or an experienced sales rep, because an experienced sales rep doesn't necessarily mean that they have any of those traits that we just went over. It just means they've done it before. And you also don't know how they've done it. You don't know necessarily, you might know what company they've worked for, but it doesn't tell you how they did. And these days, when you ask another company how someone did, they're not going to say anything that could get them in trouble for, bad-mouthing them and keeping them from getting work. So, all you do is just say, well, they worked from this date to this date. Would you hire them again? Maybe. I mean, you really just can't say anything terrible about anybody, even if it were true. But what you want to do is uncover in the interview by asking the questions, the assessment kinds of questions. Is there drive and ambition? Did they have motivation? Are they optimistic? Is this somebody that I can work with? Not somebody that can hire to throw out there and really not see them, but somebody that can actually work with and be confident that I know what they're doing, that they're confident that they know what they're doing, and that they're selling in a way that is valuable to our company. And by that I mean I've hired people this way, and I'm probably the only one, but I tend to learn everything the hard way. I've done it. It didn't work out. I learned a different way to do it. You try something else. And one of the things I found was that companies who hire people and then have them sell only kits, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with packages, but only kits, and that's all they know, are doing a disservice for us when we're trying to hire them later. And they say, oh yeah, I've sold alarm systems. And you look at it and you go, wow, they really have. They've sold a lot of systems. They can tell me where their jobs are, and I see them. And then they go out on a job for me, and they're looking around, and this is what they sold, which is essentially the kit they were trained to sell by the other company. And we go in and we look at it and we go, well, this isn't what this person needed. Why didn't you do blah, blah, blah? Well, you didn't tell me that. Because they are experienced salespeople, but they've only learned one thing, and they've only learned it one way. So it's up to us to be working with them and not just like anything else. We can't just assume. So some of the sample interview questions, what motivates you to go to work every day? And granted, these are just sample questions. What's important is what the answer is and how you take in that answer and what you use it for. What motivates you to go to work every day? Well, my mom said if I didn't get out of her basement, that she was going to stop feeding me and doing my laundry. Okay, you asked the question, they answered the question. I'm going to put a no down for this person. What are some of the ways you motivate yourself to achieve your goals? Well, let's see. I need to get out of the house because my mom says I have to be out by 8. There are all kinds of answers to this. Some are going to be good, some are going to be bad. It's up to us to actually differentiate. What we want is somebody who is motivated, somebody who says, how do I motivate myself to achieve my goals? Well, first of all, I set goals. How many salespeople have actually set goals that weren't set for them by the company that hired them, their quota, but actually set goals within that quota? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, I see myself not living in mom's basement, and I'm going to have a really cool car. Okay. That may be perfectly valid, and that person might do well, but how do you believe this job will get you there? Well, it's going to get me enough money to buy that car. Terrific. But in 5 years, I don't really have an idea where I'm going to be in 5 years. So that means either I don't really care where I am in 5 years, or this job is really just a stepping stone to earn some money right now. You may still want to hire them. People like that can still work out. But if that's the only reason they're there and you see no other motivation or drive, again, not somebody who's going to be open to you coaching them. How do you challenge yourself to improve over the long term? I keep doing the job. I don't quit. That's not the same answer as, here's how I do it, here's my motivation, here are my goals, this is my tracking, all of those kinds of things, which actually say something a whole lot different. And how would you define success in your career? Well, if you don't have an idea of what success means, it's by not setting a goal. If you don't know where you're headed, it's really hard to get there. So why should you coach sales reps? I mean, after all, it's just more time. It's just more time spent with the people who are not the talent. Well, they are. And salespeople who receive 3 hours of sales coaching a month, just 3 hours a month, they exceed quota, they boost their revenue by 25%, and they increase the average close rate by 70%. Could any of those numbers help you in your business if your sales team was doing that? And what if not just your top person was doing that, but all of your salespeople were doing that? We can get there. We just have to make it a priority. And right now, of course, it's difficult to hire people, and so the priority can be filling seats. But we have to learn not to get complacent about that and say, okay, I've got this person and they're just okay. But just okay isn't just okay. And I need to continue being open, and just because that person is there in that seat doesn't mean that they should be. I have to keep looking. And that's a hard thing to want to do when you're slammed every day with customers calling and jobs to go out on and jobs to fix and all the rest of the things that you have to do in a day. Hiring mistakes are costly, and a lot of the numbers of that cost don't go into your financials. So an error, if you're hiring an entry-level salesperson, can cost your company 30 to 50% of the salesperson's annual salary. That's an entry level. If the job's a mid-level sales position, that person leaving could cost up to 1.5 times their annual salary. That's a lot of money. Add to that if you've used a recruiter to bring them in, even if you haven't, that the recruiter costs will go onto your financials, but what you're not going to track and what you're not going to have, and is going to be a loss, is the amount of time that your people spent with that new person, teaching them your programs and your software and how things work and what your processes are and all the rest of it, and the car that you gave them and the benefits that you paid for, and the costs, you guys know. I mean, the costs are huge. So you don't want them walking out right away or you telling them to leave right away. So who here has a sales leader whose responsibility is to coach and train the sales rep? Anybody have someone who does that? Okay, a few of you, that's excellent. What's the percentage of their time that they spend coaching? I had, in my last position, 17 direct reports in 5 branches that were spread out. The farthest one was 4 hours from me by driving. And there was no other way to get there besides driving. The whole helicopter taxi thing hasn't worked out yet. And I'm in California, we should get it first, just saying. So the ability to coach, and I love coaching, I do it all the time. In fact, it's what I do now as a consultant. But I couldn't do it. There just literally was no time. I had to do the quotas, and I had to hire new people, and I had to do the forecasting, and I had to, all of the rest of the stuff that you have to do. I basically took one of my salespeople and made them a coach, and literally they coached the sales team because they could pull out the hours to do it, and I made it worth his while. But literally the coaching still had to happen, and it made a difference because you've got to have that attention must be paid, as they say. Nearly half of all managers spend less than 10% of their time coaching others. We get it. We understand why. We know what we're in. We know this business. But for coaching to be effective, sales managers should spend at least half their time coaching, regardless of the size of their team. Is anybody doing that? Because really, you deserve it. Are you really? That's awesome.
I'm always on the phone helping the guys. I perform the sales if I see something that's
excellent.
To me, I call and ask why they did what they did and just trying to clarify the situation. So
excellent.
It's 2-3 hours a day. Just
it absolutely is.
Just talk on the phone with the guys and see how they're doing it and how to do better.
How many sales reps do you have?
4.
Okay, great. Yep. Excellent. There's my poster child right there. The purpose of coaching is to support your salespeople. You're trying to increase their effectiveness. You want to broaden their thinking. You want to basically get them out of the box that they may have been in from another job, or they're just not used to being able to think on their own, because in a lot of companies, they got shot down for doing that. Identify their strengths, development needs, help them to do better, because if we've hired the right person, they want to do better. And then set and achieve challenging goals. So a great sales coach cares about their salespeople. That's the number one thing. You have to look at them and say, they're as much the talent to my company as the technicians are. I know, some of your stomachs turned over, but it's true. They really are. As a salesperson, I always say, nothing happens till somebody sells something. And it's true. If you're not selling something, you're doing service calls. So you have to sell. You absolutely have to, and you have to have sales reps that are producing. A great sales coach will individualize their approach because different people are going to have different personalities, different learning styles. Some people are going to learn by watching, some by reading, some by writing it down, some people with all three. There's all different ways of learning. You can't make one assumption that works for everybody. You have to take the time to teach like you're doing. It's time consuming, but it is the job. It is what you need to do in order for them to be successful, because you, who are helping them and coaching them, could probably, I'm sure, do what they're doing, but you can't do that for 4 people. You need those people out in the field, and that's really what you're trying to do is multiply the yourself, essentially, out there in the world for the company. You've got to keep them focused on the right priorities, because the one thing about salespeople that we know, and I am speaking for myself, is that we tend to have bright, shiny object problems, and we tend to get drawn away and say, hey, that's really cool. We should look at that. And then you bring that back to the office and you go, look what they were doing over at this other place. And isn't this cool? It's very cool. We'll look into that. You go out and do what you're hired to do and stay on the right track. Give people a sense of self-confidence and purpose. We value you. You're doing a good job. I'm going to continue to help you do a good job, and this is why you're doing it. Provide feedback on performance, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves that often doesn't happen, and that is the feedback of good and bad, because we're all really good about giving feedback when it wasn't so great. I'm going to help them out of a problem. I'm going to try and fix what happened. I'm going to try and coach them to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But it's equally important, and sometimes more important, to say, that was a great job. Attaboy, attagirl. At the end of the day, thank you. I learned that one when I was a young kid. I wasn't even in this industry yet, which is really a long time ago. And the person that I worked for at the end of the day would always just say thank you. And so, bye, thank you. It was huge. It was a tiny little thing, but it was huge to me. It meant that whatever happened during the day, and it's stressful, I haven't met an alarm company yet that's not stressful, and on certain days, way more stressful. It's only life safety. What could be stressful about that? And at the end of the day, to have somebody say thank you, it's like, okay, it was a miserable day. Today was not a great day, but somebody appreciated the fact that I was here and I was doing my job. It goes a long way. Never underestimate that. And then you want to share ideas and good decisions. So not only your own as the sales leader, but other salespeople who have made good decisions, share them, not just the bad ones. I've worked for an owner who decided that, if somebody did something wrong, then everyone had to be called out on the carpet for it, because that's the only way people learn. Well, it's not the only way people learn, and all it does is demoralize everybody. It certainly puts a target on the back of the person who did it wrong, and it may have just been a simple mistake on something they weren't trained for. But if that person came back with a good idea, they sold something and they used some kind of idea or some kind of inroad that was really great, share that with everybody and give them credit for it. A lot of these things are common sense, but we're busy. We're crazy busy all the time. It's just not something that you get to all the time. Like anything else, it has to be a conscious decision. And then, of course, not one style doesn't fit all. I mean, everybody's different. If you look at your sales team right now, you're going to know everybody has a different personality. They all have different quirks, different tics, and different families. The idea is to get to know them personally. If you don't, then how are you coaching somebody who you really don't know? You're not going to be doing it really well. So you've got to take into account their experience and the quality or the breadth of their experience. I could have a lot of experience in construction, but not necessarily in selling security. But I bring some experience from that. I know how a building goes together. I know what's behind the walls. I know, what has to go in there. That's some experience that's really helpful. The guy that you just hired who doesn't know any of that, you're going to have to train them differently. So everybody has different areas that they're going to excel in, and you need to work with those people on the parts that are the most important to them. Build the relationship. It's easier to learn from someone that you trust. If I come and sit down with you to do coaching, or I'm on the phone, or we're on Zoom, whatever it is, I know and this actually happened. I was working with a team last week, and then one of the women said, I gotta go, my father was just hit by a Snap-on truck. Okay, I've seen Snap-on trucks, they weigh 1,000,000 pounds, right? And, so the next thing is, how's your dad? How's everything? They're a person. It's okay to show that you care about them as a person. In fact, it goes a long way. Don't underestimate that they're actually people too. Salespeople are people too. I don't know why I always have to tell that to people. Sales is an admirable profession. That's really my biggest message I like to get out, because it is. It's just, it's like TV and movies. It gets a bad rap from those guys that look like the one in the first slide. Give assessment and feedback so that reps can be self-aware of what they're doing. If I'm doing something wrong as a rep, or I'm consistently not bringing in or able to close a certain kind of job, then there's a reason for that. Work with me on it. Find out, see what I'm doing, go with me, talk to me about it, or have me do the presentation to you. Let's find out where the problem is. I obviously don't know what the problem is, or I'd have fixed it because I want to make a sale. So work with them to basically overcome where the challenges are. It's not necessarily where I was going to say it, but it's like having an athlete. You put an athlete out on the field. Is there ever any team that doesn't have a coach? These people are particularly professional athletes. They have how many years of experience through high school and college and all the rest of it, and they hire them for millions and millions of dollars, and they go out there on the field. Do they let them just run open loop? They do not. I'm not even a sports person, but I know that there's coaches, multiple coaches, because one coach is on this and one coach is on that, and then there's the main coach. Nobody runs open loop just on their own. Coaching is essential. It's the same way in every kind of endeavor that you want to do well. So challenge their thinking and their assumptions, ask open-ended questions, alternative solutions, encourage reasonable risk-taking. That's a huge one, because you've got to be able to let people think on their own. Give them the parameters, set the borders or the boundaries of what they can do, so that, it's like the car salesman. Don't we love it when you're sitting there with your car salesman and they say, here's what we're going to sell it for, and you go, no, you know what, I'm willing to do this. And they go, hold on, let me go talk to my sales manager. Yeah, that's fun. Now, obviously, that's their negotiating method, but that's not what you want in a security salesperson. I don't feel very secure if my rep is constantly calling the office to find out if they can do something. They've got to be able to do it on their own, which means that they have to be trained and coached to know what they can do, what their parameters are. If I come back and ask for something that, frankly, if I'm the customer, I know it's crazy, but we're still going to ask, right? The answer's always no if you don't ask. So if I ask for that and then they need to go talk to their boss because it's some major thing, fine. But if it's something that is easily perceived as a simple question and the person that I'm working with can't answer it, then the training hasn't been there, because they should be able to, and they should know that they can, and realize that when they come back to the office, they're going to be supported and not berated because what they did was not within a tiny little box. This one's a hard one. Support, encourage, listen carefully, be open to other perspectives. It's a hard one. And here's the hardest one as a boss. Allow them to vent emotions without judgment. Oh my gosh, that's what you want to hear from your people, right? You want them to vent. I've owned an alarm company, and the venting I would get was always at the end of the day, and it would be the technicians who would come into my office because they've had whatever day they've had, and it's a good thing I didn't have anything to do. And so obviously sitting there, and they come plop themselves in front of my desk and just, but frankly, if you've worked with customers and customer service, what's the first thing you have to let them do? Let them get it out. You can solve the problem, you can understand the problem, you can say what steps you're going to take to handle it, you can do all of that stuff. But if you don't let them vent it out first, that's still going to be in their head and they're not going to hear you. So that's what you have to do when you're coaching sales reps too. They're humans like everybody else. I know that's kind of a wild thing to say, I know. but I'm going to keep saying it because I believe it. So not only do you have to let them vent without judgment and then carry on and coach them, but you have to be open to other perspectives. This was a really hard thing to do when we started hiring more people in our company. When we started, there were just 2 of us, and then it grows because you can't do everything. And my husband used to say, I've learned to accept other forms of perfection, which meant that it's not the way I would have done it, but at the end of the day, it did get the result that I wanted. So you have to be able to give up that micromanagement of, you didn't do it the way I taught you to do it, so therefore it's not right. Is the end result right? Is the customer happy? Did the company make the money it's supposed to make? Did the install go fine? Yes, then you did it fine, regardless of whether it's the way me as a manager would say, you have to do it this way. So that's a big one to get over. I recognize that. And then drive results by helping your reps set up meaningful goals, identify the necessary steps to reach them. You want them to set the goals within the parameters of you as the manager have set their quotas. This is how much RMR I need to make. This is how much install money I need to bring in. This is how many contracts I have to do. All of that is management, and it's required. You've got to do it. But then within that, help them set their goals. Because if I had 3 people who all were in the same position, same level of experience and the same money and the same quotas and all of that, they may all have 3 different ways of getting to that end result, which means that their goals are all going to be a little bit different. Their goals at the very end are going to hit that quota, but on the way there is going to be different. So you need to work with them on how to do that and how they're going to do it. Hold them accountable during your coaching sessions, because remember, you're holding them accountable to what they said they were going to do, not to what you want them to do or insisting that they do. This was your idea. You said that you could do this, that this would be the best way. You didn't do this, so is there a reason for that? Do we need to readjust, or what happened? Well, again, if you have hired the right salesperson who has those traits that we talked about, they're not going to sit there and go, yeah, I didn't. And if they do, they're not your person. But if they say, yeah, you're right, I meant to do that. The other thing is, if they know the coaching session's coming up, they're going to look at those goals that they set and go, oh, I said I was going to do this by then, and I haven't done that. And maybe they stay up until the middle of the night before, but they're going to get it done because they said they were going to get it done, and you're holding them accountable. But then celebrate the successes too. And this is what I was saying earlier. It's really easy to say you didn't meet your goal, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, but you brought in a customer, an enterprise customer that we didn't think we were ever going to get. You did that. That's awesome. Thank you. You closed this guy that's been out there saying, I'll get back to you for a year. Whatever it is, celebrate it, because there's going to be enough things that we have to go over that didn't work out. That's the nature of sales. We hear no more than we hear yes. But when we hear yes, let's recognize it, share it. It will go a long way. Coaching for problem solving. If you don't coach for problem solving and teaching them how to solve their own problems, you will have to solve them for them, which is fine until you have 10 direct reports plus. And as I've been known to yell out in times of frustration, I can't be everyone's brain, because you can't. You just can't. You have to do your own job, which means that they've got to have the knowledge of the acceptable parameters. They have to know what they can work within. They have to have the empowerment to make their own decisions. It drives me crazy when somebody won't. Or at the very least, if it's something really outside of the parameters, come to me and say, here's the issue, here's what I need to do, and don't come to me unless you have this last part, which is, here's what I think we should do, here's what I would like to do. I'm happy to talk to you about it, and even if I decide that your solution or your idea is not the best one, I want you to have thought of it. You can't just throw it on me and expect me to do it for you. You've got to be able to work on it yourself. I am not going to berate you if your solution is not something that we can do. Again, you have to ask. The answer is always no if you don't. So I want them to take an ownership attitude. This is what I would do if I owned the company. I own the ability to earn the commission for this job, so I need to go out there and do what is right for the customer. And again, I have to be responsible, part of the traits that we look for. And then the self-confidence, because by the time I've done all of this and I've gotten to this point, I will have self-confidence, because I've been doing all of the things that you've helped and coached me on, as I learn more and get better at various parts, I'm going to get in front of a customer and I'm going to be more confident. And it's going to show. It's going to be something subconscious. The customer is going to go, oh, she really knows what she's talking about. Because you do. And it just shows. Not because you're being in any way condescending, but because you're sharing information and you're trying to do the best thing that you can for the customer. So some of the best practices: check in on your reps' well-being. You actually care about them. Again, I'll say it over and over. They are, in fact, humans. The salespeople are human. And share, this is a big one, share your stories, good and bad, to build trust. Most of us, if you're a sales leader, have been in the trenches and have sold often a long time. You've done things right, you've done things wrong, we've all made mistakes. As I say, I'm probably the only one who ever learns the hard way. However, share your stories. And if this something that you're trying to work on with a salesperson is something that you figured out a way to handle and you want to coach them on it, but again, you figured it out the hard way, or you did it a different way and it wasn't as successful, this way was more successful, tell them that. They need to understand that what they're getting from you is earned knowledge. It's not just something that you read in a book. Not that reading is bad, I support reading, but you're in a particular industry, it's really helpful for them to know that you've done this. You've been where they are, so when they come up and say, yeah, but you don't understand, it's very clear that you do. And so it gives them that reason to trust you. Support the self-evaluation and listen to their response as they're going through their goals. You're holding them accountable. If something didn't work out and they want to reassess those goals or reset them, why? Tell me, if there's a good reason for it and it's not just a matter of you just didn't do your job, then let's see what we did. Were we too aggressive? Were we, frankly, not aggressive enough? Did we decide that we were going to do it a certain way and now the market has changed and that's not going to work? There are reasons for it, but always allow them and encourage them to be self-evaluating. And let them set their own goals, again, within your quota, because they have to own it. And the best way for them to own it is to set it themselves. How I'm going to get there. Focus on one improvement at a time. You're going to sit down, you're going to coach somebody, and if the first thing you say is, here are the 15 things that you're doing wrong, but it's okay. I'm going to coach you, we're going to work on all of these. I can't do that all at one time. Frankly, as a coach, I can't do that all at one time, but it's overwhelming to me as a salesperson to try and do all of that at one time. I can't. Focus on one thing, even if it's only for a week, but get a handle on it. See that they're headed in the right direction. Now, you can go onto your list of things you're holding accountable that you're going back to, but now go to the next one to work on specific improvements. Have them create an action plan that meets their goals. So that's the goal setting and then the steps to get there. Hold them accountable to their plan. You can't do too much of that. That's, again, the accountability is a huge part, because you can tell people all day long what they should do. But if you don't hold them accountable to it, they're not going to. For good or for bad. They may have had good intentions of doing it, but if you don't hold them accountable, it's like, oh, well, there's no outcome to that, there's no problem with that. Okay, I don't have to try so hard the next time. The problem with that, of course, is that spreads throughout a company. And if somebody is not working all that hard or trying all that hard or accomplishing all that much, and it's accepted and not held to account, then everybody else starts getting that same idea. Oh, okay, I don't have to work quite so hard. That person isn't, and they're doing pretty well. Provide ongoing professional development opportunities, and that's things along with coaching, other kinds of training. So specifically sales skills training, teach them about networking, teach them how to do consultative appointments, teach them how to stay in touch with customers long term so that when the customer says, I need another alarm system, they say, go call Joe. Not go call ABC Alarm Company, go call Joe. You're not being bid out, you are their alarm company. That is something that is a skill that takes an investment of time. And not everybody knows how to do this stuff innately. Many folks can be great salespeople, but they don't know what they don't know. And let's face it, when we hire somebody in our business, there is so much to learn. How many different kinds of systems do we sell? I mean, I don't just sell Chevys, and yes, there's different kinds of Chevys, but it's nothing compared to how many parts are in your inventory 4,000, 5,000 parts. And so they've got to learn video, they have to learn access control, you've got to teach them all of that. Not only system design, but what manufacturers you use, how those parts go together, the systems that do your bidding for you, how do you do your contracts, what's the process within your company, how do you do a work order, do you require a work order? Believe it or not, I've seen someone not. I don't know how they put anything in, but you go through all of that, and by the time you've done all of that, frankly, both of you are exhausted. You've hired them because they're a salesperson, so they must have the sales skills. They must know how to cold call, they must know how to network, they must know how to do proposals that sell. They must know how to do all of the rest of it. I mean, this is what I teach. So, but those sales skills are the last thing that we ever teach people in this business. Because if you've gone through all that other training, you're probably a month and a half, 2 months in, which means you're supporting that salesperson because their pipeline didn't come to you filled. So you've invested a lot of money. You have to get them out into the field. So do that, but don't stop at that point. It's really easy to stop because, again, you've now either hired somebody new or some other fire, not real fire, has come across, and there's just so much else that you're working on. So keep the ongoing professional development years down the road. It's going to keep your experienced people invested as well, because even your top performer might be a top performer in a certain area, but they could do better financially if they wanted to, if they could also do this. You got to be able to teach them this. They have to know that there's still a place for them to go without having to leave the company. And frankly, without even having to be a manager, because a lot of times we end up taking our very best salesperson and we make them a manager, and that's not their forte, and they're actually a better salesperson and they prefer it. Try to make sure that there's a way for them to do better, make more, do better in their profession by not having to take something that's not within their bailiwick. It's not the best use of their time. There is coaching technology. I believe that coaching is really a person-to-person thing, or a person to a group, a team. But there is coaching software out there, and the site g2.com has a lot of the various coaching programs, and it lists what they offer and all that kind of thing. But what I will tell you is that most of the sites that are on there, if you go to those sites and start looking and follow them, like on LinkedIn or their newsletters and stuff, you're gonna get a lot of really great information for free without ever having to buy into the program. And hopefully none of those people are here. But these are a few of them. I watch a whole lot of them, and there's a whole lot of stuff that's out there that you can use pieces of. You'll find a lot of references there. And then I have to say that there are many security industry consultants who are available who can help you with that. We're not supposed to advertise. They can set up coaching programs, or they can do the coaching for you. There are some times where people are more comfortable being coached by someone who is not their direct boss. Because at the same time that I had said to you earlier, as a coach, you need to listen without judgment. That can be really hard for a salesperson to believe that you really have no judgment around it. And maybe you don't, and if you don't, and they're clear about that, then you're doing a great job, and that's terrific. Sometimes it's easier to take it out. And there are lots of people who do that. But the ongoing coaching is the key. You have to keep doing it. It's going to increase the skills of your underperforming or your complacent reps. And if it doesn't, then it's time. I'm not going to get any farther with this person. They've hit the limit of what they're going to be able to do, and it's not good enough for me. It's not good enough for my company. It's fine right now, but if it's keeping me from hiring this other person that I just met who really is driven and really motivated, I want to bring them in. Do not lose somebody terrific for somebody that has worked for you for quite a while, who's just, no matter what you do, not pulling their weight. They are not helping you, and it's hard, I get it, but if they're not helping you, they're hurting you, because they're taking your money. And if you're taking somebody's money and you're not producing what they're paying you to produce, then it's a form of stealing in my book. You just shouldn't be doing it. You can help your committed reps expand their skills. Again, they can always do more. The biggest challenge we all have as salespeople is you make a certain amount of money based on the number of hours in a week and the number of hours that you don't want to sleep. Because at some point, there's only physically so much stuff you can do. So you're going to be hitting that ceiling. Well, the way to get around that or expand that, one of the ways certainly is to speed your processes through, a software that would allow you to do quoting faster and all that kind of thing. But it is, I am not saying anything. But the other thing is, I might be able to sell bigger systems. I may be able to sell to a different group of customers. I may be able to hit a new vertical. Those kinds of things, and learning that kind of skill can take even a top performing rep and make them more profitable for you and for them. And that's a big deal. And then, let's face it, hiring less experienced or no experienced salespeople is today's reality. And I know there's another session on the labor shortage. It's not new. Certainly it's not new with technicians, the talent. But it's not new with salespeople either. It's just that we've always felt like we could bring a body in and we could coach them, we could teach them, and it would be fine. We'll just tell them what to do and we won't worry about it. There are skills to be learned, and people can do better. We just have to pay attention to it and actually do it. Coaching saves you money in the long run. A company culture that supports and maintains a coaching program retains more of their staff. That's absolute. And it reduces losses from constant turnover. And constant turnover doesn't just hurt you as having to train new people and having to, somebody new come in and you have to support them during their training process and all the rest of it, but it hurts your customers very much. In a couple of ways. One, they call in and they want to talk to their salesperson. Oh, they're not here anymore. It's now Sally. Joe's gone. It's now Sally. Okay, great. I can live through that. But in another 6 months, when I call in and Sally's gone too, I start to go, who am I working with? What is the problem with this company that they can't hold on to salespeople? There's something going on here, and maybe I should at least look around. And of course, the one thing you don't want your customers to do is go talk to other alarm companies. It's like, your boyfriend going and talking to other girls. You don't want that. At least not alone. Anyway, I've reached my limit of being good, apparently. It's just the time is up. But so it hurts your customers to see that there's all that kind of turnover. And it aggravates the other people in the office because your admin staff is working with salespeople too. So are your techs. The best thing that can happen is have your techs and your salespeople really get along. And we know how hard that is. So if you're facilitating that and your folks really are working together, your technician can pick up a phone and call a salesperson and they will talk to them like a human being and say, here's what I was thinking. We used to call it in my company the, excuse me for language, the what the hell were you thinking call. And it would come in about half an hour after my guys got to the site, and they would be looking around. It started with my husband, of course, when we were the only two in the company. The phone would ring. I would see it was one of my guys. We know what it is. And I'd pick up the phone. What the hell are you thinking when you sold this? That's the standard call. But if it happens, first of all, I'm going to learn something from it if there's something that I missed. But in no way am I going to demean the technician. Maybe just missed something that, well, I wrote that down, that part, I had that part pulled, it's in there, this is what I did. Well, did you know that? I did, and here's the deal. And if I didn't put a note in about it, I'm sorry. That kind of conversation goes a long way, because the thing that kills companies really fast is a culture where everybody is, and it's not my fault, and nobody will take responsibility for anything. And if they won't take responsibility for anything, it's because they're afraid of the consequences of taking responsibility for it. If they know they're going to get lit up by their boss for any little tiny thing that they do wrong, they are not going to come to you with it. And in a business like ours, where I had a guy who said after the smoke detector was leaking during a rainstorm the night before Thanksgiving, and I was on the phone with my customer all night long, because he didn't want anyone to come to the house, but he wanted to call me every hour when the keypad went off. We talked to the technician and said, did anything happen in the attic when you were drilling that? It's really funny. I saw some data. I thought I saw the skies, but then I thought, no, I probably didn't. Really? Right? What could happen? He wasn't up all night. But they need to be able to come to you. They have to be able to say, here's the deal, and here's what happened. This guy, I'll be honest, it wasn't really so much of a culture thing. I would own it if it were our daughter's boyfriend. Anyway, he's gone. Mostly forgotten. Anyway, it's family business. This is what we do, right? Coaching creates more money long term because your well-coached reps are going to be empowered. They're supported by you. They're going to stay longer. And if they're making money, that's what they want. And if they're making money, you are making money. And that's what you want. The idea that a salesperson is making too much money is either short-sighted or you need to revise your comp plan. Because if they're making money, you should be making money. If you're not, you've got to look at what's happening. Are the jobs not selling for enough money? Are they not going in the way that they were sold? Do we need more training? All those kinds of things. But if you've got salespeople that are earning more money, you should be making more money too. So that's all I've got for you for right now. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
I may have missed the beginning, sorry if I did, but have you got a sweet spot for number of coaches per number of reps?
Yes and no. If the coach is just, the sweet spot is that everybody's being coached. So if I want to be able to coach my salespeople like 3 hours a month, then how much time do I have and what are my other jobs? There might be some people that I could coach as a team. Maybe there are a couple of people who are working on a particular kind of vertical. I could work with them together. The idea is to do the most that you can and not do nothing is really a big thing. If your folks are saying, basically you're reaching the end of the time for your coaching session and they're saying, but I still have then it's not enough, is really the thing. Or you find that there were things that you wanted to go over, you've got the agenda for your coaching session and you want to be able to talk about some particular jobs or a particular strategy and you're running out of time, then either that person needs more coaching and you need to schedule more time for them, or you just don't have enough time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, not perfect science, I get that.
Yes, sir.
What about, you didn't mention anything about tools, giving them tools, right? What tools?
Well, depending on what you're selling and how you're selling it, there are a lot of different tools. One, of course, can be software that you can carry with you as you go to job sites. You can talk to Tracy after. But the tools that you can give them are basically either, well, what I would say, one thing is to go to that website and look at some of the agendas and the kinds of coaching lists that they'll give you in some of the online ones, or work with somebody who will do that for you. You can have someone set that up for your company and then you guys do the coaching. The main thing would be, because it's different for each person, the main thing that I would say absolute for everybody is you've got to start with the goals. You have to set up the goals first. And as much as I hated learning about it at a particular company that I worked out, the SMART goals are really the way to go. You've got to have that. They have to be specific and they have to be timely and they have to be measured, and all of the rest of that is really critical. It's basically a drill down of every goal that you want to hit and the steps that you're going to take to get there. And any goal can seem too big, and any job that you're trying to install can be too big unless you break it down. Same thing even when you're bidding a job. You go look at the structure and it's humongous and you go, okay, small steps. So the tools are, what you have set up as a coach to say, these are the places where I want you to concentrate. These are the things that I want you to do. I want to end up, maybe one of your tools is that you do a ride along once a month or once a quarter with your more experienced people.
Yeah, what I was getting at was tools that you can give the salesperson to go on site and have the proper tools once they're there. A flow chart presentation is an example, right?
Right.
Follow the bouncing ball, add to it, delete it, whatever you like. But some kind of fundamental basis that you can work off of, right? I think the fish sticks from the head. The owner of that company needs to really, that's a saying, right? The owner of that company hasn't fed the people down below
The how to do it.
Successful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Another successful thing we're seeing dealers that I go see, on a Friday, they have a manufacturer come there once a month and work with their people. And I see a difference in companies that way. Now the salespeople are in that room, the technicians are in that room,
Yep.
it's all the same song that's being taught to them at this point, you know? And
Yep.
you know, it's appreciated.
They're being supported. They know that the company cares about what they know. I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago and they said, I got this opportunity to do access control. I don't really have a lot of knowledge about it. And so I don't know how to do this. Well, you've got to talk to the manufacturer's rep. They're going to help you with the quote. Talk to your boss, have them come in. There are a number of things that you can do and that you need to do. The tools that I like salespeople to have are certainly a way to, if you're bidding on site, to be able to bid on site, and you can do it the old-fashioned way with paper, or you can do it with mobile options. And there are software programs out there. There's some here at ESX. So look for those, and you can do it right there in front of the customer. And now with communication, you're able to get numbers and that sort of thing right away. I personally have always used a checklist, and when I'm doing site visits, and I've had checklists given to me by trainers and things like that that were, 4 pages of 8.5 by 11 with really tiny lines because there's so many questions. And if I were to ask anything like that list of questions, I'd be out on my ear 2 hours later when I was still asking questions. I do kind of an overview of the specifics of things that I need so that I'm remembering, because no matter how long you've done it, you can still get distracted by somebody or something on the site. And so that I make sure that I talk about every item that I need to talk about or I want to at least bring up. And then I can delve deeper if it's something that triggers them and says, yeah, I want to talk about that. And then so I don't forget anything. And frankly, I'm always thinking down the road too. So I make it a point that take all the information that I can. I only want to do this much of the system. I don't want to do Windows. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Okay, but as I walk around, I'm going to note all of it, because when you come back and we're talking about the final of it and they say, you know what, I was thinking, maybe I should. Do you need to come back out? No, I got it right here. Oh, you're a professional. You paid attention to what you were doing. So and this is part of what I train on, but what are you looking for? What are the kinds of questions that you ask? Or I'm not even 100% on questions. Sometimes it's comments that I'll make. Is this something that you do? Or is this a way that, one of the things I like to do on office buildings, which, as I guess they said this morning's meeting, is the biggest way of having the violence on the workplace is domestic. Most people have a back door off the parking lot for their office buildings, and there's a gate, and it's all very secure, isn't it? We're doing a great job here. So my typical thing, and happened by accident the first time I did it, was I happened to be sitting there. I was early for an appointment. Somebody drove through the gate, so I popped in behind them, because that's easy to do. Went in right behind them. I got out of my car. I was dressed like a business person, and I walked in the back door, which was propped open because it was a beautiful day. And I walked all the way through their office, and there were tons of cubicles. Hi, how are you? Said hello, and I didn't have a ski mask on, so I didn't look like I was unsafe or anything. And so I finally got to the door that went to reception, and I opened that door, and I said to the receptionist, this is who I am, this is who I'm see. I need you to sign in and get a badge. And I wasn't sure you were doing that because I've already been through your office. But she doesn't care. But the guy that I was talking to cared. And so I made it a point to always try and do that from then on, because it worked really well. And that's the kind of thing when I say, if you're coaching and you're sharing, if somebody figured that out, see what you can do with it. It's really effective. What do you mean you came in? We have a policy. Yeah, but your policy is that your door gets propped open. Happens all the time. I have a solution for that. And that's really the point. I have a solution for this. This is what happened. I can fix that. So now we can talk about it, even though access control isn't what they were interested in. They wanted a fire alarm. But anyway. Yes?
I'm a sales manager that sells as well. I don't know if that's a common thing in the industry. I assume so. But I'm wondering, is there a balance that should be put in, like how much time should be spent coaching and managing, how much should be spent selling, and then should you looking for
Yeah, this is the hardest part for sales leaders, is to be able to have enough time to do everything. I think you have to start with what the end result is. If my goal is to coach everybody at least, say, 2 hours a month, every other week, I want to be sure that I touch base with every person. Then I need to schedule that. around that, I now have to schedule the next group of things that I have to do. At the point that you can either do all of that or not do all of that, you're either overtasked or something has to give because you only have a certain number of hours. So if you need to decide what's more important, at that point, I would say, if this is my job, and these are all of the things that I need to do to make my job work, and here's my calendar, and this doesn't allow for the emergencies, which never happen in our industry, or the customer complaint, or the job site that I have to run out to because nobody else can talk the customer off the ledge. All of those things happen. If I can't fit all of that into my calendar, then at that point I have to go to my boss and say, what is it you would like me to give up? And then the answer is, I don't want you to give up anything. Okay, but this is the time frame. There's only so much I can do. Can I outsource something? Can I hand something to somebody else? Can we reassign jobs? Those are the kinds of things that you've got to be able to talk to your boss, who hopefully is coaching you, and say, I'm realistically trying to do all of this stuff. There's a limit. Is there anything here that we can put a new process in place? Is there something we can streamline? Are there reports that I don't have to do that could be handed off or created automatically and sent to me that I don't have to put together by hand? Those are the kinds of things that I would be working on. Start with the stuff you need to do. You've got to manage. You've got to go out, ride-alongs if that's what you're doing. Whatever the things are that you must get done, put those on first. And we don't have to eat or sleep, right? That's what selling your company is for, a vacation. Anybody else have any questions?